Coming up with this edition of Pinpoint Weather University, we were in the Pacific Ocean last week with the Super El Nino. Now we're headed to the Atlantic Ocean. We're tracking the Great Atlantic Sargassum Belt. We're talking about where this originates and why it is stacking up along some of our beaches in Florida and along the Caribbean shorelines. Also, why you should stay away from this gross seaweed. Plus, our drought is likely to worsen here in the Carolinas over the next couple of weeks. Talking about what that can mean for you at home. I'll be up on this edition of Pinpoint Weather University that starts right now. Welcome into Pinpoint Weather University, my friends. I'm meteorologist Brandon Lawson here on Queen State News Plus. Big shout out to our YouTube viewers, and for those that might be tapping in with us on Facebook, on our Queen State News page, and also on Instagram. Maybe you're hitting it up with me on Instagram at WHBrandon9 or on our Queen State News page there as well. I appreciate all the support you guys are bringing to the show, and as one of the meteorologists here in the Pinpoint Weather Center, we continue to provide you with climate and weather-related topics each week. And I try to make it a little bit creative. You know, we were in the ocean last week talking about the potential Super El Nino that could be in store for us later this year, but we're also going to be back in the ocean this week as well. But we're going to a different ocean. We're going to the Atlantic Ocean today. And you may have been on a vacation in Florida or the Caribbean islands, and maybe you saw some of the seaweed stacking up, the sargassum seaweed that it kind of looks yucky, right? Along the coast. It seems a little bit just kind of odd, right? That it shouldn't be there. This has been happening for years now, well over a decade, but it's not something I think many folks like to vacation around. And I've got a special guest today. I don't really know much about sargassum seaweed. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know much about the Great Atlantic Sargassum Belt, but luckily we have somebody who does today. Please welcome our special guest today, oceanographer with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Dr. Matu Hinoff. Thank you so much for coming on the show with us today. I want to talk about just the sargassum belt in general. Where does this originate from, and how does it end up on our shores?
Hello, Brandon. Thanks for having me. So the sargassum originated first in the Sargasso Sea. So that's in the western North Atlantic that used to stay there, and with some of the seaweed going in the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf regions. But there was a big shift in 2011. Some of this seaweed got exported outside of the Sargasso Sea and ended up in the tropical North Atlantic and then in the Caribbean in large quantities. And that's how this great sargassum belt was established. And now it's here to stay.
It seems like it's been picking up here lately. You know, you mentioned it's been happening kind of for years now. Are we seeing more of a pickup in the seaweed stacking up along the shore, or is it staying about the same each year?
So 2025 was a record-breaking year. And for 2026, we're on track for another record year. So it looks like the quantities are not decreasing, they're more increasing. So we can expect, unfortunately, more beaching of sargassum in the whole Caribbean region this year.
And for sargassum itself, it's actually good for marine life. Is that correct?
That's true, yeah. When it stays offshore, it's a great habitat for marine life. That's a habitat for sea turtles and other species of fish. So it's a good thing when it stays in the ocean. But when it arrives on the beaches in large quantities like what we see now, or very close to the shore, that's not good anymore.
Now, is it a harm to us? You know, we see it along like the Florida coast very often. I'll see people even picking it up and maybe walking around it. Is it a
Yeah.
danger to us as humans?
So when it dies, when it decays, it releases hydrogen sulfide that's not nitrogen sulfide, sorry, that's not good, that smells bad. That's the smell of rotten eggs. So you want to stay away from the bad smell.
So
What
you wouldn't want to be around it, right? You want to kind of
exactly?
navigate.
It, it's a gas that's toxic if it's inhaled in large quantities, but the sargassum on the beach is more of a nuisance now, I would say, in terms of the smell, but also sargassum is also known to carry heavy metals that also is not healthy. So yeah, just stay away from the seaweed when after it's on the beach.
You mentioned we had a record-breaking year in 2025 of sargassum. What are some of the main drivers for the seaweed? Like ocean temperatures, things like that?
So yeah, it's a combination of things most likely. So we're still studying these processes, but it looks like the sargassum has found uh, the perfect condition for growing in this new region in the tropical Atlantic. So that's more favorable temperature and probably nutrients and lights. That's why it's thriving. But it's, yeah, most likely a combination of factors that make it grow so well now.
Now, does this flow with our currents? Like, is that how it stacks up along the coast?
Exactly. They grow in the open ocean in the tropical Atlantic, and then they're carried westward with the main current into the Caribbean Sea and then into the Gulf. And then the interplay between the currents and the winds is going to push some of these mats onto the shoreline.
I pulled up this map here. Is that kind of what you're talking about there? Just the current's moving the sargassum around?
Exactly. You see the loop current entering the Gulf from the Caribbean Sea and carrying it over along Florida through the Florida current and then the Gulf Stream. And so these large patches are advected, are carried over with the current, and then some of it make it to shore, most likely pushed by winds.
I'm very curious. So, what's the peak for the sargassum buildup along the coast, like of Florida and the Caribbean islands? Is there a peak where this stacks
Yeah.
up?
Exactly. So the grow during this season, that's the growing season now, started probably a bit earlier in the year through the spring, and it peaks late spring in and the summer in July, August, and and then you see them go now in the Caribbean Sea and then being advected as they go through the Caribbean Sea and into the Gulf region. So it's just the beginning of the peak of the season.
And how much studying goes into the seaweed, the sargassum? Like, is there is it a very young science, or is the research really picking up on this since it's starting to ramp up even more?
Oh yeah, the people have studied sargassum for a long time, but this new paradigm, this new situation with these very large quantities and this new region where sargassum is developing has driven a lot of science and research in the recent years uh, in the US and also in the outer Caribbean region. So a lot of efforts going into all different aspects, the biological aspect, the chemical aspects, the transport processes, what happens when the sargassum arrives on the shores, what can we do with it, the health aspects of it, obviously, is very important.
I assume
So
you
yeah,
guys,
all
yeah,
sorts of research.
yeah. And I'm sorry to cut you off. I was saying, I assume you guys like collect it as well. I was seeing this picture here. Do you guys like collect it and bring it back to labs?
So biologists certainly uh, do take out some sargassum for studying, but I know we're not involved in large scale removal of sargassum.
Sounds good. And I want to go take a quick break here on Pinpoint Weather University, but I just got a couple more questions for you after we take the break, and we'll talk more about if we could slow this down, or maybe if climate change has a role in it. Those would be two questions asked right on the other side of the break here on Pinpoint Weather University. Welcome back into Pinpoint Weather University. I'm meteorologist Brandon Lawson. We're talking about the Great Atlantic Sargassum Belt. And again, we've been talking about how this has been stacking up along the coast of Florida and the Caribbean islands here along those shorelines, especially last year, having a record-breaking year. And it's not best to be around. We've already learned in this episode that it can be unhealthy for you. So it's best not to touch it like this or move it around or walk around it. It's best to stay away from it because it does build up, and as it decays along the coast, builds up the bacteria and can cause issues for us health wise. So definitely best to stay away from it, but it can make it a little bit harder for our vacations. And again, we do have Dr. Matu Luhanoff on the show today, an oceanographer with NOAA. And you were just talking to us about how you guys are studying it. The research is building up with it. Is there any way that we can slow down the buildup of it along our coastlines, or is it something that we can't really control right now?
So it happens at such a large scale that it's difficult to imagine a very efficient way to slow down this whole process. We're still investigating the reasons why they're doing so well now, why, and we would need to identify maybe a limiting factor, but it doesn't seem uh, feasible to really control the amount of sargassum at a large scale. It's really yeah, very large quantities spread over very large distances, and the sargassum is made of patches of a few meters, tens of meters, spread over very large areas. So it's really difficult to imagine controlling that.
And last question, you mentioned ocean temperatures can play a role. With ocean temperatures picking up here and warming up over the last several years, could climate change have an influence on why this is starting to pick up over the last decade or so?
So sargassum does well with warm waters. So the ocean warming in the recent years probably gave favorable conditions for sargassum in the new growing region in the tropical Atlantic.
And then last question before we let you go. I know it's bad for us, but what kind of marine life really takes advantage of like the seaweed itself? I am very interested. I was looking at some of like the slides here that you guys provide, and I noticed like it looked like sea turtles taking advantage of it. So, what kind of marine life really enjoys this?
So there's a whole ecosystem that, yeah, includes the newborn, the sea turtle, baby sea turtles. They do very well in sargassum, and there are fish species that are specific to this ecosystem, this habitat. So it's a whole world on its own, these floating mats in the open ocean.
All right, Dr. Ratu Ludinoff, thank you so much for coming on the show with us today. I really appreciate your time, and you taught me a lot today too. You know, I haven't learned much about the Great Sargassum, the Great Atlantic Sargassum Belt, and just seeing all the pictures and images come in because you know this time of year where we've got spring break. You know, people are planning their summer vacations, and you know, when you step foot on the beach, I don't know if you want to be walking in seaweed, especially this kind. So I appreciate you bringing to light a little bit more about what this is, why we should stay away from it, and seeing what could maybe happen in the future.
Thank you for having me, Brendan.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We got a little bit more to talk about on this episode of Pinpoint Weather University, including our drought. It continues over the Carolinas. Why I think it's actually going to worsen here over the next couple of weeks. That's coming up next on Queen State News Plus and on YouTube. Welcome back into Pinpoint Weather University. I'm meteorologist Brandon Lawson. You're taking a look at the latest drought monitor from the United States Geological Survey, which was released on Thursday, April 2nd. And you can see the extreme drought has really filled into Charlotte now. So Charlotte, Concord, Monroe, Alabama are all experiencing extreme drought conditions, level 4 out of 5 drought. And when you pull this map out a little bit more, you can see the drought has also really filled in across the upstate of South Carolina. So the drought is getting worse. And again, we did see some rain over our Easter weekend. We looked at the Easter weekend rainfall for Charlotte. We received about a half an inch of rainfall. Now, with how lousy that weekend was, you would think, oh man, maybe we got some help here. But unfortunately, not the case. This is not going to be enough rain. Unfortunately, I actually think that our drought is going to be worsening over the next couple of weeks because we're going to be experiencing a lot of dry conditions. So, as we're recording this on Tuesday, April 7th, over the next week or week and a half, we're not going to be expecting a drop of rain at all. And even when we get into more of an unsettled pattern, it looks more like hit or miss showers and storms maybe late next week. And even then, that's not going to be helping us out. We need several days of beneficial rainfall, and that just does not look like it's going to be in our future. Now, we're not alone in this drier pattern. You look across the eastern U.S. for this week and into next week, man, it is a dry slot almost. I mean, you look at this big circle, the big donut hole. I've been joking around, you know, Artemis 2, we've been able to get some images of the far side of the moon, and we have seen the far side of the moon more than we've seen rain here lately, it seems like. And that's just the case here in the Carolinas. So, how do we get out of this drought? I drew up kind of a plan for us. Not to say that Mother Nature is going to listen to my plan, but I did want to draw up a plan on how this would actually happen. So, I looked at the average rainfall over the next 3 months here. This includes April, May, and June. About 4.2 inches of rain in April, about 4.1 inches of rain is what we usually experience in May. And then in June, we experience about 4.8 inches of rainfall. So over the next 3 months, we should be getting at least 4 inches or more each month. Now, I do think we're going to be in trouble for April, considering we've only seen about half an inch of rain so far and we're not really getting much more through mid-April. So we are actually likely going to be behind unless late April gives us those April showers that we really need. So over the next 3 months, we average about 13 inches of rain here in the Charlotte area. So where does that put us? Our average rain over the next 3 months, we're looking at 13 inches. The rain that would be needed to end the drought here in Charlotte is 18 inches. So you're still 5 inches behind, even if we get to our precipitation over the next 3 months. So we still would need more rain than our averages to beat the drought. Now, I always compare it to the credit card. And look, I'm not trying to signal, any weaknesses or anything to anybody when I say this, but when you're paying off a credit card, there's interest, right? And I've made this mistake myself in my life. I've paid the minimum payment on a credit card, and unfortunately, the interest gets to me. I just keep paying and paying and paying, and you don't really get anywhere, especially if you have a lot of interest on like a card. So here's the deal: when it comes down to our rain, our interest is stacking up, and what I mean by that, so essentially, you look at the average rainfall over the next 3 months. This is our minimum payment over the next 3 months, right? We need 4.17 inches of rain in April. That's our minimum payment for April. Our minimum payment for May is 4.13 inches. Our minimum payment for June is 4.8 inches. We need to reach those at least minimal rainfall payoffs to at least try to help us alleviate the drought. Now, if we get more than that or pay off more rainfall in these months, then we might be able to start eating away at the rainfall deficit that we've picked up because of the interest we've acquired over the last few months where we haven't received our average rainfall. I hope that made sense, but essentially our average rainfall is the minimum payment, and we have not reached that minimum payment over the last 6 to 7 months. And we've been accruing interest, and now we're in this drought. And unfortunately, we really need to pay off more money or get more rainfall than our averages over the next few months in order to get out of the drought. That was a fun example. And again, average rainfall, it can happen, but we really need help already for April, considering we're going to be dry through mid-April at least. Hopefully late April, we can find 4 inches somewhere. This is a look at the precipitation outlook through mid to like early late April. We're looking from about April 15th to April 21st. The precipitation outlook, essentially where you're seeing the green, that is where we're going to see above normal rainfall. That's where you're going to see averages above normal. So Dallas, Houston, I mean, we're looking at spots west of the Mississippi River. These are spots that also need rain desperately. They need some drought busting rains over Texas right now. So that'll be good for them. Florida also getting some soaking rains this week. And then as we go into the Carolinas, at least April 15th to April 21st, we're talking about average rainfall. So I mean, that could be anywhere between like an inch or so, depending on what the average would be for that week. So it's not necessarily bad, but as I mentioned, average rain is the minimum payment. We need more. We need to see some green on this map over our area, meaning we're getting above normal precipitation. Now, you don't want to flood. I mean, you don't want too much rain where we're going to flood, but we need enough beneficial rain or several days of beneficial rain to where we're able to not soak just the topsoil, but we're also able to soak some of the soil that's underneath the topsoil as well. Really get down into the soil and saturate it a bit. So that's something we'll be trying to do here lately. But something that does worry me for next week, I'm going to pull up our nets map here. I'll do it full screen. This is a look at the temperature outlook as you're looking at April 15th to April 21st. And something you notice about the temperature outlook is that we're going to be seeing well above normal temperatures as we go through mid-April. Now, what does that mean? That means that we're going to be hot, and I'd say at least mainly dry. Hot and dry conditions don't go well together. I show this graphic a lot. It was something I made about a month ago. I'm just proud of it. I want to keep showing it to you. No, I mentioned evaporation. It's one of the most important parts of the Earth's water cycle. And with evaporation, it is essentially water that is being transferred to the atmosphere. And that water is getting transferred to the atmosphere from our water levels or lakes or rivers or streams or soil. The water could be coming out of that as well. But however, this process picks up when temperatures get warmer because a warmer atmosphere can hold more moisture. So essentially, if the atmosphere gets hotter, it wants more water, like we do. When we get hot and sweat, we want more water as well. Essentially, Mother Nature is going to find that water somewhere, whether we have low water levels or not. It'd be like if I got really hot after a run and I was over a friend's house. If they don't have a lot of water, I don't care. I need water. And Mother Nature's saying the same thing. It doesn't care that our water supply is low. It needs water. And I will say this, and all this to say, I do think that we're going to likely see water restrictions here soon over the Carolinas. It's gotten to the point now where we are very, very dry. Something I want to, eventually get on. Some people I want to get on the show, at Charlotte Water and other organizations around here that do our water. Just figure out where their hearts are when it comes down to the drought. We've already seen how it's impacted our wildfire situation here in the Carolinas. North Carolina, as of April 7th, still under a burn ban. South Carolina did lift their burn ban. I believe it was Monday, April, necessarily it was March 30th. They released their burn ban after a little bit of rain. However, I do think that we'll probably see that reissued again because we've got several days of dry conditions. The drought's going to be worsening. And then with lower humidity days, a bit of a breeze, you got a significant wildfire day. So something to keep in mind. I wouldn't open burn anywhere within the Carolinas right now. I would just hold off on that and try to stay safe with that as well. So something to keep in mind, folks, as we go through the growing season now. Growing season, it really is officially open for business now. I don't see any below freezing days in the near future, if at all, for us here in Charlotte. Mountains, we'll wait till about May, at least May 1st. But here in Charlotte, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be able to grow, except for maybe you're going to be lacking the moisture here. So we're going to continue to talk about the drought more and more on more episodes of Pinpoint by the University. Hopefully you enjoyed our talk with Dr. Matu Luhanoff. Again, he is with the NOAA, I believe it's like the Physical Oceanography Division. Essentially, he does a lot of research with their Atlantic Oceanographic and Meteorological Laboratory. I've got the little paper here in front of me because I know his title's pretty long, but essentially he's an oceanographer with NOAA, does a lot of research and studying. And I want to read a quote from him before we go to break. I read his bio before the show, and in his bio, it's got a little quote here. And this is from Dr. Matu Luhanoff himself. He said, "I've always been fascinated by scientific discoveries, and oceanography is a relatively young science where there is still so much to do. So many processes to observe and understand. That is why I became an oceanographer." I just wanted to mention that from him as he gave us a little bit of insight on the Sargassum seaweed. I'd say a little bit, but man, a lot of good information there. I'm meteorologist Brandon Lawson. Thanks again for coming on the show with us today and watching, and hopefully you enjoyed this episode. We'll see you next time. As always, take care of yourself and each other as we navigate this earth together. Take care.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.